Keanu Reeves lost his father at 3, his best friend at 29, his daughter before she was born, his girlfriend in a car crash. Through it all, he stayed silent, he forgave, he moved on. But there was one person he couldn't forgive, one betrayal that cut too deep. It took him 60 years to say the name out loud. When he finally did, even his closest friends were stunned, because the person Keanu hated most wasn't who anyone expected. It was someone everyone loved. Keanu Reeves was born on September 2nd, 1964, in Beirut, Lebanon. At the time, the city was on the edge of chaos. Just over a decade later, it would be torn apart by a civil war that would last 15 years. His mother, Patricia Taylor, was British and worked as a costume designer. His father, Samuel Reeves, was Hawaiian Chinese and a geologist. But whatever plans they had for a future together ended when Keanu was just 3 years old. His father walked out and never came back. That moment changed everything. His childhood became a blur of moves, changes, and new beginnings that never lasted. By age 10, Keanu had already lived in 4 different countries, from Beirut to Sydney, then New York, and finally Toronto. No roots, no real friendships, just constant motion. His mother was doing her best, trying to restart their lives again and again, but every place felt temporary. School didn't make things easier. Keanu had undiagnosed dyslexia, which made reading and writing a daily struggle. From 1979 to 1984, he went to 4 different high schools one after the other: Etobicoke School of the Arts, De La Salle College, Avondale Secondary Alternative, and then a performing arts school. He couldn't keep up. Teachers called him lazy or distracted. Report cards were filled with D's and F's. By the time he was 17, he dropped out. It looked like he'd failed, but it was actually the first step toward finding something that truly fit him. Acting. At home, things weren't much more stable. His mother's love life brought in a line of men who seemed like they might become father figures, but none of them stayed. One of them, director Paul Aaron, married Patricia when Keanu was around 11. He even tried to introduce Keanu to theater. It felt like maybe, just maybe, he had someone, but it ended in divorce. The pattern repeated again and again. A new man, a brief calm, then another goodbye. Keanu learned early on that the only person he could count on was himself. At 13, he had one last meeting with his real father. It happened in Kauai, Hawaii. They hadn't seen each other in a decade. It wasn't a warm reunion. There were no hugs or apologies, just a quiet, awkward meeting arranged by relatives. Samuel had been drifting through life, struggling with drugs and unstable jobs. The meeting ended with no real connection, and Keanu never saw or spoke to him again. By 1984, Keanu was 20 and trying to claw his way into acting. He took a job with CBC as a youth correspondent, covering events and interviewing kids for local television. It paid just $200 a week, but it gave him access to the world he really wanted: entertainment. Behind the scenes, he was auditioning nonstop, taking any role he could find. But there was another obstacle: his name. Agents told him that Keanu was too ethnic. It wouldn't work in Hollywood. They wanted him to change it. So for 2 years, he went by Casey Reeves or Casey Reeves at auditions. He hated it. The name Keanu means cool breeze over the mountains. It was part of who he was. In 1987, he dropped the fake names and decided to just be himself again, even if it meant getting fewer roles. That was the year he landed a role in River's Edge. It wasn't big, but it was real, and it was his. Years earlier at De La Salle College, Keanu had played goalie for the school hockey team. They called him the Wall because nothing got past him. He was calm, focused, and unshakable. His goalie stats were strong, 2.1 goals against average, and he helped his team win a championship in 1982. That same calm focus would later show up in his acting. Directors noticed it. He wasn't flashy, but when things got intense, Keanu didn't crack. He needed that focus in 1984, when he was doing everything he could to survive. One moment, he was acting in a cheesy Coca-Cola commercial, pretending to be a cool guy at the beach. He made $2,500 for it. The next moment, he was performing Shakespeare at night for free. He played Mercutio in Romeo and Juliet at a small Toronto theater. He gave it everything. Critics praise him, but it didn't pay the bills. He was juggling embarrassment and passion at the same time. That same year, he got a small role in a low-budget Canadian show called Hanging In. He played a troubled teen named Wolf. It was supposed to be his big break, but it turned into a disaster. His performance was stiff. He forgot lines. It took multiple takes to get simple scenes right. He only lasted 4 episodes before they wrote him out. It shook his confidence badly. He even considered quitting acting and going back to hockey. But instead, he stuck with it. That failure taught him something he never forgot. You can't fake it. You have to show up, prepare, and be real. It's that same authenticity that later made him one of the most beloved actors in the world. Reeves landed his breakout role in a dark, disturbing film called River's Edge, released in 1986. It was based on a real murder that shocked a small California town back in 1981. Reeves played a quiet teenager named Matt who had to decide whether to report his friend for killing his girlfriend. The film didn't hold back. It showed how numb and disconnected young people could be. For a first big role, it was a risky choice, but Keanu pulled it off. Critics praised how he stayed calm and distant on screen, like an old film noir detective. He didn't shout or cry. Instead, he showed deep emotion just by holding back. That control would later become his signature. The film won Best Picture at the Independent Spirit Awards and put Keanu on the map. Then came something no one expected. In 1989, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure changed everything. It was loud, silly, and full of time travel. Keanu played Ted, a clueless but sweet high school slacker who just wanted to pass history. He and Alex Winter, who played Bill, were cast by accident. The script originally imagined the characters as dorky metalheads, but when the writers saw Keanu and Alex together, they rewrote the roles. The pair had such good chemistry that they became best friends in real life. The movie almost didn't happen. The original studio went bankrupt during production. Another company saved it just in time. Nobody thought it would work. Even the director left town on opening weekend because he was scared it would flop. But audiences loved it. The $10 million movie made $40 million in theaters, and suddenly, Keanu was a comedy star. People couldn't stop quoting the film. Lines like "be excellent to each other" and "party on" dudes became part of the culture. Ted was simple-minded but kind, and Keanu played him with total sincerity. That made him lovable. Before long, critics who had once ignored him started to pay attention. They realized he had something rare. He was magnetic on screen. The movie led to a sequel, a cartoon, a TV show, and even breakfast cereal. More importantly, it showed studios that Keanu could carry a film. That changed everything. While Bill and Ted made him famous, Keanu didn't just stick with comedies. Around the same time, he took on serious roles to prove he had range. In Dangerous Liaisons, 1988, he acted alongside legends like Glenn Close and John Malkovich in a period drama set in 18th century France. The movie cost $14 million to make and earned $34.7 million. It was nominated for 7 Oscars, including Best Picture. Keanu played a young music teacher, caught up in a web of lies and manipulation. It was a huge leap from playing Ted, and it showed he could handle complex characters. He followed that with Parenthood in 1989, a heartfelt comedy, drama directed by Ron Howard. Keanu played a troubled but sweet young man dating a single mother. The cast included Steve Martin and Rick Moranis, big names in comedy. Keanu held his own among them. The film was based on real family stories and was nominated for 2 Academy Awards. By picking smart, serious roles in between his blockbuster comedies, Keanu earned respect in Hollywood. But Ted never really left him. That role did more than make people laugh. It shaped how audiences saw Keanu. Ted wasn't smart or brave, but he was honest and kind. He never crossed moral lines. He was awkward but good-hearted. That mix became Keanu's trademark. He wasn't like other leading men. He wasn't trying to be macho or slick. He was relatable. He felt like a real guy. And that's why people connected with him. Even decades later, Keanu stayed true to that image. When he returned for Bill and Ted Face the Music in 2020, he pushed back against making the characters edgy or dark. The writers wanted to add flaws, but Keanu said no. They wouldn't do that, he insisted. And he was right. Ted and Bill were still goofy and pure, even as middle-aged dads. That sense of decency wasn't just part of the role. It was part of Keanu. In 1991, a strange thing happened. A movie about bank robbers whose surf turned into a cult classic. Point Break wasn't just another action flick. It starred Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze, and it made over $83.5 million on a $24 million budget. But behind the adrenaline waves and gunfights was something more, something nobody expected. Beneath all the action, the film hinted at a powerful emotional pull between the two male leads. Critics later called it the greatest female gaze action movie ever. Some even called it a wet western. Whatever it was, people couldn't stop watching it. Reeves played Johnny Utah, an undercover FBI agent. Swayze played Bodie, the zen-like surfer leading a group of bank robbers. On the surface, it was cops versus robbers. But under that was a strange tension, a deep bond that felt more like longing than loyalty. The camera lingered on them. The action felt intimate. Their friendship looked more like a romance. And people noticed. Even the name Point Break, a surfing term, felt like a metaphor for the emotional clash between duty and desire. Years later, The Fast and the Furious would borrow the same plot. But it was Point Break that did it first, and did it with heat. That same year, Reeves took a massive left turn. He co-starred with River Phoenix in My Own Private Idaho. It was a strange, haunting story about male prostitutes. Phoenix played Mike, a narcoleptic hustler searching for home. Reeves played Scott, a rich kid slumming it in the streets before returning to his privileged life. The film cost just $2.5 million, but made over $8 million and became part of a movement called New Queer Cinema. Phoenix won Best Actor at Venice. Reeves shocked everyone by taking such a daring role at the height of his fame. He kissed another man on screen, and never once tried to explain it away. The film was poetic, raw, and painfully beautiful. It mixed Shakespeare with street life. It used dream sequences and broken timelines. It wasn't built to be a hit. It was built to say something. And it said it loudly about class, identity, and sexuality. In 2024, the Library of Congress added it to the National Film Registry. It had become a permanent piece of history. But while his star was rising, not everyone was clapping. Critics turned on him. Empire magazine mocked him, saying he gave the nearest thing to a performance in his career. CNN said he was void of talent. His calm, spaced-out delivery and habit of saying, "Whoa," became jokes. Reviewers thought he was getting roles he didn't deserve. They felt he hadn't earned it yet, and they made sure the world knew it. Then came Speed in 1994. The studio panicked when Reeves cut his long hair. They thought fans wouldn't recognize him. But director Jan de Bont insisted it was the right move. Fox nearly delayed filming. Money ran out during production. Some scenes were shown to test audiences using rough storyboards. But the audience didn't care. They loved it. Fox gave them more money, raising the budget to $30 million. The film opened at number one. It made $121 million in the United States and $350 million worldwide. It outturned The Rock. It almost beat Die Hard with a vengeance. Reeves was officially a blockbuster star. But when offered a sequel, he said no. That sequel, Speed 2, Cruise Control, bombed hard, losing over $100 million. Reeves had dodged a bullet. But not all bullets were on screen. In 1992, Reeves starred in Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. The film looked great on paper, big cast, big budget. But Reeves's attempt at a British accent turned it into a punchline. He worked with coaches. He practiced obsessively. But the accent came out stiff, awkward, and strange. Coppola later said Reeves tried so hard but just couldn't relax. The performance became infamous. Acting classes still use it as an example of how not to do an accent. Even though the film did well, that one detail haunted him. But nothing affected Reeves more than River Phoenix. They had met in 1990 while filming I Love You to Death. They clicked, and when My Own Private Idaho was casting, Phoenix almost said no. Reeves wasn't having it. He jumped on his motorcycle and rode over 1,300 miles from Toronto to Florida to convince him in person. "I'll do it if you do it," Phoenix told him. And so they both did. That kind of loyalty wasn't normal in Hollywood. Then, on Halloween night in 1993, everything changed. Phoenix collapsed outside the Viper Room after a drug overdose. He died before help could reach him. He was only 23. At the time, Reeves was in the middle of filming Speed. Sandra Bullock remembered it clearly. She said she watched him grieve in silence. "He's very private," she said, but he couldn't hide that. The pain changed him. It was a kind of sorrow you don't just walk away from. Director Jandaban had to rearrange the entire shooting schedule. Reeves was too broken to perform on some days. He became quiet, withdrawn. Entertainment Weekly ran a profile titled Keanu Reeves, the next action star, but inside, it told a story of an actor carrying something heavy. Bullitt described seeing it in his eyes, a sadness that never left. Phoenix's death wasn't the beginning of loss for Reeves. It was the middle of a pattern. He'd already lost his father as a teen. He'd already known abandonment. Phoenix was supposed to be different, a best friend, a brother. Losing him cracked something open. Reeves later said Phoenix was tired. He was coming off film after film, he explained. It takes a lot. And it did, in the mind and heart. That understanding shaped the way Reeves would live. He pulled away from Hollywood noise. He became famously private. The man who once rode a motorcycle across the country to save a film role now refused to talk about Phoenix at all. When asked in interviews, he often stops mid-sentence. He once said before trailing off. He smiled and looked down. That was it. He never shares the details. "I'll never discuss them," he said once. "They're too personal." He doesn't use Phoenix's death for attention. He doesn't milk the past. But in that silence, in that refusal to explain, you hear the echo of something that never healed, a kind of loyalty you don't see in most stars. Keanu Reeves shocked Hollywood in 1997 when he turned down Speed 2. Cruise Control. The original Speed had made $350 million on a $30 million budget. Fox offered Reeves millions to return as Jack Traven, but he took one look at the script and said no. His reason? The movie was set on a cruise ship. It's called Speed, and it's on a cruise ship, he reportedly said. Cruise ships barely hit 30 miles per hour. That was slower than the bus in the first movie, which had to stay above 50. Reeves believed the entire concept was broken. The tension, the urgency that made the first film a hit would disappear. Fox didn't take the rejection lightly. In fact, they blacklisted Reeves for 14 years. From 1997 to 2008, he didn't work with Fox at all. The punishment was harsh and personal. They even spread rumors that he was skipping films to tour with his rock band, Dogstar. What they didn't expect was that Reeves would become even more successful during this exile. He starred in the Matrix trilogy, which made him $250 million and turned him into a cultural icon. Fox, in the end, missed out on one of the biggest stars of the next decade. What made Reeves' choice even more unbelievable was what he did instead. He went to Canada, not to shoot another movie, but to perform Hamlet on stage in Winnipeg. He traded a blockbuster sequel for a Shakespeare play in a modest theater. He was paid a fraction of what he would have earned from Speed 2, but he didn't care. GQ that he wanted to do something meaningful in a world where most actors chase fame and fortune. Reeves chose purpose in the 90s that was almost unheard of, and then came the ultimate proof. He was right all along. Speed 2 was a disaster. It scored just 4% on Rotten Tomatoes. Critics called it slow, silly, and painful to watch. Even kids thought it was dumb. Its budget spiraled from $100 million to as much as $160 million, but it only made $48.6 million in the United States. It won Worst Remake or Sequel. At the Razzies and was nominated for Worst Picture, Worst Actress, and Worst Supporting Actor. Reeves had dodged a sinking ship literally, and financially being blacklisted actually gave him freedom free. From big studio politics, Reeves explored new roles. He worked with bold directors like the Wachowskis. The Matrix changed his life, but he also took on smaller films playing flawed or dark characters. In The Gift, he shocked audiences by playing an abusive husband. He even took pay cuts just to act alongside legends like Al Pacino and Gene Hackman. He wasn't chasing money anymore. He was chasing growth. By 2008, Fox finally ended the ban. But by then, Reeves didn't need them. He had become one of Hollywood's most respected names. Even The Matrix had a wild backstory. Reeves was a first pick for Neo. He wasn't even a second or third. He was a last resort. The producers tried everyone: Will Smith, Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, Johnny Depp, Nicolas Cage, even Sandra Bullock. They were so desperate they offered to rewrite Neo as a woman for Bullock. One by one, all the big names said no. Reeves said yes. And the result, history. The Matrix came out in March 19, 1999 and made $469 million on a $60 million budget. It had an 8.7 IMDb rating from over 2 million votes. It won 4 Academy Awards. It introduced bullet time to cinema long coats, and sunglasses became cool again. People started talking about simulations and the red pill. It wasn't just a film, it was a global phenomenon. But even The Matrix had its battles. The Wachowskis had a deep idea behind the film. In the original script, humans weren't batteries. They were processors in a neural network, a living supercomputer. The studio thought audiences wouldn't get it. So they changed it. Instead, humans were turned into power cells, a concept that made no real scientific sense. Hollywood wanted it simple. As a result, the movie lost a layer of depth. Some say we missed out on a far more thoughtful version of the story. Then came the sequels, The Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions, both released in 2003, made big money. Reloaded earned $739.4 million. Globally, it broke R-rated box office records. But the excitement didn't last. The plots confused fans. The infamous architect scene left viewers dazed. Revolutions gave no real answers. The ending felt empty. Audiences walked out disappointed. Keanu later admitted he understood why people were upset. For many fans, the sequels ruined the original magic. And for Reeves, the backlash hit hard. After the sequels, Reeves hit another rough patch. People started mocking his acting again. Critics called it performances wouldn't. He was seen as a fluke. Films like Feeling, Minnesota Chain Reaction, and The Last Time I Committed Suicide didn't help the career comeback that The Matrix gave him was starting to fade. For over 10 years, he drifted. Hollywood moved on. Then out of nowhere came John Wick in 2014. And just like that, he was back. A new kind of action hero, silent, deadly, and cool. Audiences loved him again. Reeves had survived every twist, rejection, exile, failure. He turned it all into fuel. His journey wasn't just about movies. It was about staying true to who he was. When others played the Hollywood game, he walked away. When studios blacklisted him, he found new paths. And when the world gave up on him, he came back stronger. Keanu Reeves never imagined that his biggest regret in Hollywood would come from someone he once trusted. In 2000, right after the massive success of The Matrix, he suddenly found himself locked into a movie he had never agreed to do. It was called The Watcher, and the moment he saw the contract, something felt wrong. He was sure he had turned it down, but his signature was there, legally binding him to the project. That signature wasn't as it was forged, and worse, it wasn't done by a stranger. It came from someone close, someone inside his own circle of friends. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding or mistake. It was planned. This person had access to his private documents and used that access to trap him in a film he didn't want to make. At the same time, Hanu was already dealing with emotional pain in his personal life. His relationship with Jennifer Sim was rocky, and she was struggling with her own issues. Faced with this betrayal, Keanu had 2 choices he could go to: court, fight the contract, and let the battle drag on publicly, or he could quietly go through with it and protect his peace. He chose the second option. He filmed The Watcher, even though everything inside him said no. The film was a disaster, made just $29.1 million on a $30 million budget. Critics tore it apart, and Rotten Tomatoes gave it an embarrassing 11%. Keanu's performance looked stiff and detached, understandably. So he didn't want to be there. He later called the movie terrible and admitted it was a low point in his career. The person who forged his name was never revealed, but after that, Keanu changed how he handled everything: contracts, friendships, trust. It was a painful lesson in how vulnerable even a top actor can be when the people around him decide to take advantage. At the same time, his personal life was falling apart. In 1998, Keanu met Jennifer Sim at a party for his band Dogar. She was young, just 26, and worked for director David Lynch. Their connection was instant. They moved in together quickly, and within a year, Jennifer was pregnant with their daughter. They planned to name her Ava Archer Sim Reeves, but on Christmas Eve in 1999, Jennifer went into early labor. Ava was stillborn at 8 months. What should have been the happiest time of their lives became their darkest. The grief was overwhelming. Jennifer needed medical help and was treated for a postpartum depression. The pain was too heavy. Their relationship began to fall apart in the weeks after Ava's death. Keanu kept his distance, but never truly left her side. They stayed close. He wanted to help her heal. Jennifer, however, turned to partying and alcohol. She spiraled. And yet in early 2001, they had begun to reconnect. They were trying again on April 1st. They even had brunch together in San Francisco. The next day, she was gone that night. Jennifer went to party at Marilyn Manson's house. She got drunk, and Manson had someone drive her home. But later that night, for reasons no one fully understands, she decided to drive herself back. She crashed her Jeep on Kahina Boulevard. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt. She died on impact. She was 28 when Keanu couldn't reach her the next morning. He called the coroner's office and asked if she was at a crash investigation, uncovered dark details. Jennifer had 2 prescription medications in the car. She also had 2 rolled-up dollar bills with white powder. Her mother told police she had been battling depression and pain from a past car crash. She had also just lost her grandfather a month earlier. All that grief piled up to lawsuit her mother filed against Marilyn Manson. Didn't go anywhere, but nothing could undo what had already happened for years. Keanu stayed quiet. His career cooled down after The Matrix. He starred in several movies that didn't work. The Lake House, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Henry's Game. By 2014, Hollywood had almost written him off. He was 50, and people thought his time had passed. Then came John Wick. No one expected it to be a hit. It had a small budget, only about 20 to 30 million. Lionsgate didn't even buy the film until 2 months before it came out, but the film exploded. It made $86 million. Critics loved it. The role fit Keanu perfectly. Quiet, calm, deadly. The director and writer built a character around him. They kept the dialogue short and focused on his presence. It worked. People saw him in a new light. That movie gave Keanu his second life in Hollywood. Today, John Wick has made over $1 billion across the franchise. Is expected to appear in at least 6 movies. As the character, it became the most successful role of his entire career, but not everyone saw his success with kindness. In 2022, Matthew Perry randomly attacked Keanu in his memoir. He questioned why brilliant actors like River Phoenix and Heath Ledger had died, but Keanu Reeves still walks among us. It wasn't a joke. Perry doubled down and brought up Keanu again. While talking about Chris Farley's death, the public reaction was instant and harsh. Nobody could understand it. Keanu had never worked with Perry or done anything to him. Perry tried to explain. He said he was a fan and that he just picked a random name. No one really bought it. The attack felt personal, bitter, and out of nowhere. Keanu didn't respond. He never does. That's always been his way. Quiet strength. Even when the world throws chaos at him through betrayals, heartbreak, death, and public insults, Keanu Reeves has endured. He doesn't lash out. He doesn't fall apart in front of cameras. He just keeps going. He's built a career and a legacy on surviving what would have broken most people.